Welcome to The Raconteur by Craig K. Collins. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a raconteur as the narrator of an anecdote or story, especially a person particularly skilled in this role. Here you'll find thoughtful, handcrafted prose, stunning photos, and insights into people, places, and cultures, mostly off the beaten path. This week's episode takes us to Ketchum, Idaho, where I visited the haunts of author Ernest Hemingway. In all the seasons that will ever be, chasing the ghost of Ernest Hemingway in Ketchum, Idaho. I am standing on the Big Wood River Bridge in Ketchum, Idaho, about to commit a crime. But, having paused here to steel my nerves, I've become mesmerized by the crystalline waters that burble and swirl beneath me. It is October, my favorite month in Idaho, and I, a native son returned, was born, so my mother tells me, on an October day just like this, warm but crisp, with a cloudless, impossibly blue autumn sky stretching from horizon to horizon. A breeze riffs across the water, and the aspen, with leaves a luminous gold in the afternoon sun, shimmer along the riverbanks. My face is warmed by the sun, but cooled by the breeze, which carries to me the familiar whiff of autumn leaves and mountain waters. I breathe deep and relax, watching a fallen leaf coming down river atop the rushing current, spinning like a rudderless yellow boat caught in a maelstrom. Again, on a day just like this, not far from this spot, Ernest Hemingway famously wrote, "Best of all, he loved the fall. The leaves yellow on the cottonwoods, leaves floating on the trout streams, and above the hills, the high, blue, windless skies. Now he will be part of them forever." Those words, beautiful and haunting, were a meditation on death, a recurrent theme in Hemingway's work, and were spoken by the author in 1939 beneath an October sky just like today's, at the cemetery across the river, as a eulogy for his friend and hunting partner, Gene Van Gilder, who is the publicist for the Sun Valley Lodge and the man who first introduced Papa to Idaho, one of Hemingway's many great loves. Van Gilder had died 2 days previous from an accidental gunshot blast while duck hunting on the Snake River. I pull myself away from my reverie and stride purposely on a road that takes me north along the west bank of the Big Wood River until I reach a sign that reads, "Private driveway, no trespassing." A small guardhouse across from the sign appears vacant. I scan the hills and manicured lawns of the posh neighborhood behind me for any potential witnesses. There are none. So it is then I carry out my crime, of the trespassing variety, in broad daylight no less, walking boldly past the sign and brazenly onto the property where the Nobel Prize-winning author, Ernest Hemingway, spent his final days before succumbing to a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the foyer of his fine mountain home above the banks of his beloved Big Wood River. Traveling to commune with the ghosts of dead literary giants has become a niche all its own within the travel industry. For if you're a serious reader, you'll want to soak in the ambience of your favorite author's life in order to perhaps better understand their work or to capture the essence of where they lived and what they saw on a daily basis. It's not unlike traveling to Bordeaux or Napa to study the terroir of your favorite Cabernet, to smell the soil, walk the slope of the vineyard, talk to the vintners, and feel for yourself the heat of the sun at midday and the chill of coastal fog at night. And if you're a serious writer, a pilgrimage is perhaps de rigueur to the home of one of the authors whose books enraptured your soul, broadened your understanding of the world, and perhaps instilled in you this compulsion to write. A few popular sites on the literary tourism circuit include, of course, Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford-upon-Avon, England, Wordsworth's Dove Cottage in England's Lake District, Mark Twain's Victorian Gothic home in Hartford, Connecticut, and Margaret Mitchell's Tudor Revival house in Atlanta. But when it comes to the homesteads of literary giants, easily the biggest and busiest tourism magnet is Hemingway's Spanish colonial estate, complete with its 6-toed cats in Key West, Florida. This is exactly what the moneyed neighbors of the Hemingway house in Ketchum wish to avoid and have fought to prevent: a daily parade of tour buses filled with literature nerds and papa devotees eager to see and feel the ambience of a place Hemingway truly loved. And of course, to satisfy the morbid curiosity of seeing where this great American novelist ended it all. Which is why the location of this house has always been kept on the down low, why there are no regular public tours available, why there are no signs in Ketchum pointing to its location, why on the National Register of Historic Places its address is listed simply as restricted. The home is owned by and under the stewardship of the privately funded and civically powerful Community Library in Ketchum, which claims its mission is to honor the house as a contemplative, non-commercial space, prioritizing ongoing preservation efforts, and a writer-in-residence program. Move along. No 6-toed cat, margarita-fueled, Jimmy Buffett-style daily circus to be seen here. I am hardly the first Hemingway devotee to have visited this site. That honor would go to one Hunter S. Thompson, who came here in 1964 and wrote an insightful piece for the National Observer titled, "What Lured Hemingway to Ketchum?" This was long before Thompson's drug-addled gonzo days, and the writing in this piece, clearly influenced by the prose of Hemingway, is lyrical, profound, and tight. Papa, I'm sure, would have approved. Yet Thompson, being Thompson, did manage to abscond with a souvenir of sorts when he pried off a pair of elk antlers mounted above the home's entryway. The purloined antlers hung for decades above the hot tub of Thompson's Woody Creek, Colorado ranch near Aspen, before his widow Anita, in 2016, returned the misappropriated memento to the grateful stewards of the Hemingway house. I have made the pilgrimage here for reasons likely similar to Thompson's, the intent to commit larceny notwithstanding. I have long felt a kinship to Hemingway. I was born in Idaho a few months before he died here. I was enraptured at a young age by writing that spoke to me: his love of nature, the lyricism of his words, the romance of his language, his famously spare, less is more style, his dialogue, his worldliness, his fearlessness in tackling big, important subjects, topics concerning the meaning of life, of love, of war, of death. Further, I have many times done all the other Hemingway-esque things that can be done in and around Ketchum. I have fished for lunker trout in Silver Creek. I have shot pheasant near Shoshone, tracked deer and elk in the Pioneer Mountains, done shots of Jack Daniels at the Sawtooth Club, engaged in a bleary, late-night conversation on a bar stool there with a stranger about existentialism, I think, stayed at the Sun Valley Lodge, paid a housekeeper $10 for a tour of the Hemingway suite, typed out a few sentences on Hemingway's typewriter there. I have come this far in my life and in my writing to hardly be deterred by a no trespassing sign, nor to be thwarted by the community library's efforts to keep aficionados like me at bay. I walk onto the fairway-sized lawn of the Hemingway house and am struck by the home's isolation, sterility, aura of loneliness. It feels abandoned. Preserved, yes, but abandoned nonetheless. The neighbors surely prefer things this way, but the house in no way reflects the vibrancy, excitement, and life force that Hemingway exuded in both his writing and his very public approach to living. The house is ensconced on 13 secluded acres, with a hillside to the west, the Big Wood River running north-south just beyond the lawn to the east, and a panoramic view of the Boulder Mountains to the northeast. I climb a set of stairs to the wraparound deck on the home's second level, taking time to peer into the windows at a great room with mid-century modern decor. I sit on a wooden bench on the deck and take in the view, as I imagine Papa must have done dozens of times. The autumn vista doesn't disappoint. In fact, it's just how he wrote it in the Van Gilder eulogy. The cottonwoods along the river have yet to fully turn and are a mix of green and yellow. The hills beyond are tawny and gray, with the Boulder Mountains rising in the distance to meet the high, blue, windless skies. After a half hour on the deck in meditative contemplation, I come back down the stairs to the home's side entrance, which is a mudroom where jackets, raincoats, scarves, mittens, and snow boots are stored. It's an essential architectural feature here in the mountains, especially in winter and spring. This is where Hemingway, on a fine summer morning in July of 1961, took with him his favorite shotgun, a side-by-side double-barreled pigeon gun made by W&C Scott & Son of Birmingham, England. The gun, with its barrels of Damascus steel, was well-traveled and had been with Papa on duck hunts in Italy, safaris in Africa, and skeet shooting in Cuba. It's the gun he chose to kill himself with. My primary reason for visiting the Hemingway house, as melancholy of an experience as it proved to be, was to see the site of his death, not out of a morbid curiosity, but rather out of frustration, and in my own minor way to attempt to set the record straight. Hemingway, at the height of his powers, was arguably the greatest American author of the 20th century. He was, inarguably, the most famous. In his thirst for adventure, he left the homogeneous plains of the Midwest for a war in Europe. He then stayed as an expat, drinking in the intellectual vibrancy of Paris in the 20s, traveling throughout the continent, and writing about people, places, and ideas that seemed a world removed from his Illinois roots. And from there, he was the ultimate traveler, venturing to every continent except Antarctica. And like a Pied Piper, other Americans followed him overseas and to exotic points around the globe in droves. As for Ketchum, it can be argued that it was Hemingway who changed everything, transforming it from a sleepy, very much out-of-the-way mining and sheep town with only a handful of paved roads to a place where the glitterati now gather and the airport is cluttered with private jets. The Hemingway industrial complex is strong in Ketchum. From the community library to the Sun Valley Writers Conference to the annual Allen & Company billionaire confab, to even the region's rugged outdoorsman style, decor, and ethos. All of it owns at least some debt to the arrival and presence of Ernest Hemingway. Much mystery has been ascribed to the reasons behind Hemingway's death. He suffered from writer's block. He was wrestling with an existential crisis. He couldn't come to terms with his diminished abilities. Life no longer had the flavor or taste of his youth. From what I've learned in the many years on this earth, those are all misguided notions. They're merely symptoms, not the disease. The real cause behind Hemingway's tragic suicide can be found in virtually every one of his books, articles, and interviews. Hemingway himself practically screams it from the mountaintop. It's the alcoholism, plain and simple. Hemingway lived hard and he drank hard. And when a person drinks for so long and so consistently at that level, serious depression can begin to consume the mind. And it's clear that was what was happening to Hemingway in his later years. And while Hemingway lived a quintessential American life, he also died a quintessential American death. For decades now, the same killer that stalked and claimed Hemingway, has been stalking and claiming the men of the Mountain West. The combination of high rates of gun ownership, along with high rates of alcoholism, has been a largely ignored epidemic. Hemingway was indeed a quintessential American. He romanticized drink, he romanticized guns. In the end, the combination killed him. Later, I'm at the Ketchum Cemetery standing over the large, flat marble slab that marks Hemingway's grave. Among the pine cones and needles that have fallen from the tall, handsome spruce that was planted next to the grave at the time of Hemingway's burial is a clutter of coins and dollar bills, as well as pencils and pens. Perhaps donations to the Hemingway Society? Writing implements as totems from aspiring writers? But also, disturbingly and ironically, there are several bottles of alcohol, cognac, Prosecco, bourbon, Italian Barolo, placed atop his tomb. I've seen this before at the grave of Jim Morrison at the Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris. Morrison suffered from alcoholism and died ignominiously in a Parisian apartment bathtub at the age of 27, likely from a drug and alcohol overdose. Yet his fans, much like Hemingway's, see fit to festoon his grave with bottles of Jack Daniels and Jim Beam, somehow oblivious to the tragic irony therein. I am walking back now on the road that leads east out of town to the Sun Valley Lodge, where I'm staying. The sun is about to set behind the ski mountain to my back. A chill begins to settle in the valley. First snowfall is likely no more than 2 or 3 weeks away. Trail Creek runs to my right, and the cottonwoods stand in a yellow line above a horse pasture fence, where an Appaloosa hangs its head over the top rail. I have apple slices in my camera backpack. It's the Appaloosa's lucky day. I hold a slice in the flat of my palm and offer it to the horse, who snorts softly, nuzzles my hand, and gently picks the offering away with his lips. I stroke his forehead, scratch his mane, pat his neck, and offer more slices, one by one. A cold breeze carrying a hint of winter sweeps down from the Pioneer Mountains to the east. The cottonwood leaves rustle loudly, gleaming yellow in the last light of the day. I think of Hemingway and the final few sentences of his eulogy to his friend Van Gilder, sentences that may as well have been a eulogy to himself. And now he has come home to the hills. He has come back now to rest well in the country that he loved through all the seasons. He will be here in the winter, and in the summer, and in the fall, in all the seasons that will ever be. He has come back to the hills that he loved, and now he will be part of them forever. I feed the Appaloosa the last of the apple slices before giving him a final pat on the forehead and one last stroke on his soft muzzle. The sun now set, darkness begins to fall on the mountains to the east. I sling my pack over my shoulder and continue on my way. The horse, unhappy with my departure, paws at the ground and gives a snort. I head toward the dark and do not look back.